In his annual New Year address, Chinese President Xi Jinping asserted that the reunification of Taiwan with mainland China is inevitable. As Taiwan's elections approach, Taiwan is on edge. They are preparing for scenarios where China may invade. Preparation includes addressing the risk of cyberattacks that could paralyze critical infrastructure and disconnect Taiwan from the world. Crystal 2, a cybersecurity researcher, notes that Taiwan faces threats from attackers who infiltrate computer networks to disrupt key sectors like telecommunications, energy, and finance. The island experiences around 5 million cyberattacks daily, with an 80% increase in attacks reported in the first half of 2023. Chinese state-sponsored groups have been identified as the perpetrators of some attacks, including the Flax Typhoon Group. Taiwan's semiconductor industry, vital to the global economy, has also been targeted, with significant breaches reported, such as at the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. The United States has even stated it would destroy Taiwan's semiconductor infrastructure rather than let it fall into Chinese hands. The Taiwanese government is considering various worst-case scenarios, including the possibility of undersea communication cables being cut off, effectively isolating the island. As a contingency, Taiwan is collaborating with foreign satellite service providers to ensure communication can be maintained during a crisis. The focus is on maintaining government stability and providing accurate information to civilians. But why is Taiwan doing such drills now? They must have some reason to believe that China will invade soon. Before we delve into the reason why China will probably invade Taiwan this year, hit the like button as it helps out with the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more content like this. The possibility of China invading Taiwan this year is heightened due to several factors. Firstly, the current geopolitical climate is tense, with conflicts in both the Middle East and Europe drawing significant international attention and resources. The United States, involved in supporting Ukraine and Israel in these conflicts, has reportedly spent substantial resources, including over $75 billion in Ukraine alone. This heavy investment could be perceived by China as an opportune moment to assert its long-standing claim over Taiwan. The U.S. Navy, already stretched thin with deployments around the globe, faces a challenge in countering China's substantial and ready naval fleet. Considering the U.S.'s engagement in multiple conflicts, China might view this as a rare strategic window where American military attention is divided, potentially making a move on Taiwan more feasible. Another compelling factor that may prompt China to consider an invasion of Taiwan is the current global political landscape, particularly the upcoming elections in numerous countries in 2024. These elections, encompassing over 50 economies and accounting for a combined GDP of around $40 trillion, include critical polls in the United States. The U.S. election in 2024 poses a significant variable. If the Democratic Party loses, the potential for a more hawkish U.S. stance towards China increases, especially if Donald Trump, the frontrunner for the Republicans, secures the presidency. Historically, during Trump's tenure, 2017 to 2021, China was notably restrained in its territorial assertions. This contrasted with actions taken under President Biden's administration, where China demonstrated more assertiveness towards Taiwan and India. Xi Jinping may perceive Biden as a less formidable opponent than Trump, influencing his calculus on Taiwan. The urgency to act before the 2024 U.S. elections could be driven by the uncertainty of Trump's return to power. Although Trump faces several legal challenges, his election could result in a more stringent U.S. policy against China. This potential shift in American foreign policy might make post-2024 conditions less favorable for China to assert its claims over Taiwan, hence the consideration of a preemptive action before the U.S. elections conclude. The third factor influencing China's potential move on Taiwan relates to its internal challenges. China is grappling with several critical issues that could impact its ability to project power in the future. Firstly, China's declining birth rate poses significant demographic challenges, placing increasing pressure on its youth and potentially hindering future economic growth. This demographic shift may lead to a range of domestic issues, weakening China's ability to engage in international conflicts. Secondly, China's economy is experiencing turbulence. The Evergrande crisis and the bursting of the real estate bubble have raised concerns. Additionally, several Chinese banks have struggled to pay their depositors. The country's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic has been less robust than expected, with growth projections hovering around 4%, relatively low for a developing nation. This economic slowdown may limit China's capacity for aggressive foreign policy moves. Thirdly, China's international reputation has suffered. Allegations of debt traps, misinformation about COVID-19, and other geopolitical strategies have led to a loss of trust by other countries. While many countries still rely heavily on China for manufacturing, major companies like Apple are diversifying to other countries like India, perceiving China as a less reliable business partner. Given these accumulating economic challenges and the potential for exacerbated issues in the event of a war, there is a strategic imperative for China to consider moving against Taiwan sooner rather than later. The anticipation of increasing domestic and international constraints in the future might push China to act while it perceives it still has the capacity to do so. Let's talk about the dynamics of Taiwan's elections and their implications concerning the possibility of a Chinese invasion. In Taiwan's political arena, four major parties hold significant influence: the Kuomintang Nationalist Party, KMT, the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, the People's First Party, PFP, and the New Power Party, NPP. The KMT and the DPP are the predominant forces. The KMT generally advocates for closer ties with China, while the DPP leans towards bolstering Taiwan's independence. Despite the KMT's inclination towards closer relations with China, it's crucial to note that they do not support the idea of Taiwan becoming a part of China. On the contrary, they envision a scenario where China adopts Taiwan's democratic governance. Consequently, regardless of which party triumphs in the Taiwanese elections, the outcome is unlikely to drastically alter the prospects of Taiwan reunifying with China. Taking into account the various factors we discussed, there is a growing belief that China might invade Taiwan before the 2024 US elections, or at the latest by the beginning of 2025. Having explored the reasons behind the likelihood of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan within this timeframe, let's shift the focus to Taiwan's defensive capabilities. Specifically, we will examine whether Taiwan would be able to defend itself in case of an invasion. Ma Ying-jeou, former president of Taiwan from 2008 to 2016, issued a stark warning about the impossibility of Taiwan winning a direct military conflict with China. In an interview with Deutsche Welle, Ma emphasized the overwhelming military might of mainland China compared to Taiwan, stating, "They're too large, much stronger than us." This statement came just before Taiwan's presidential election. Ma, a member of the Kuomintang Party, has long advocated for avoiding war with Beijing, a stance in contrast to the incumbent Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, which has adopted a more hawkish approach toward China. He partially blamed the DPP for the worsening cross-strait tensions. When asked about Taiwan's ability to hold off the People's Liberation Army until U.S. forces could arrive, Ma expressed skepticism, suggesting that such optimism was unfounded given the significant military disparity. He advocated for non-confrontational diplomacy with Chinese leader Xi Jinping rather than relying solely on military defense. In a case of an invasion, Taiwan would be heavily dependent on the USA and would have to use the porcupine strategy. As China intensifies its rhetoric and military activities around Taiwan, experts suggest Taiwan should adopt an asymmetric defense strategy to leverage its geographic and technological advantages and exploit the vulnerabilities of the People's Liberation Army, PLA. This strategy involves distributed, survivable, and affordable defenses to complicate a potential invasion by China. Experts suggest that Taiwan's conventional military platforms, while useful against gray zone threats, may not withstand an initial assault in a cross-strait invasion. Instead, a defense strategy comprising numerous small, affordable, and resilient systems could effectively exploit China's military vulnerabilities and deter an invasion. The complexity of an amphibious or airborne invasion across the Taiwan Strait is acknowledged. Taiwan's geographical advantage and the inherent difficulty of such military operations mean that well-deployed, resilient defenses could significantly hinder an invasion attempt. This approach, sometimes called a porcupine strategy, involves investing in small, mobile, and resilient anti-air and anti-ship systems, countering the more considerable resources and capabilities of China. Despite high-level support for this asymmetric approach in Taiwan and the United States, implementation has been slow. Taiwan continues to invest in conventional, high-cost military systems, which may not effectively counter a full-scale invasion. This preference is attributed to their utility in current conflicts, political and industrial benefits, and traditional military preferences. Experts propose a balanced approach where Taiwan continues its conventional defense investments, but also significantly ramps up its asymmetric capabilities. This includes investing in numerous, distributed, and mobile systems that can survive initial strikes and engage invading forces effectively. This strategy emphasizes the need for Taiwan to adapt to evolving PLA capabilities and maintain the effectiveness and lethality of its defenses. It calls for cooperation between the US and Taiwan in strategy development, procurement, and training, and highlights the importance of building resilient infrastructure and stockpiles to withstand a prolonged conflict. In conclusion, Taiwan may be able to cause significant damage to the PLA, however, it is unlikely that Taiwan would be able to defend against China as it is the world's strongest army. Now that we have spoken about the possibility and outcomes of a war, let's talk about the economic ramifications of a war. A recent article by Bloomberg suggests that an invasion of Taiwan could cost the world economy $10 trillion. In a recent edition, Malcolm Scott from Bloomberg examined the potential economic impact of a conflict over Taiwan. The newsletter highlighted that Bloomberg Economics had estimated the cost of a war over Taiwan to be around $10 trillion, or about 10% of global GDP. This estimated cost significantly surpassed the economic impacts of both the Ukraine war and the COVID pandemic. The analysis considered two scenarios: a Chinese invasion involving the US and a blockade that cut off Taiwan from global trade. A crucial aspect of the economic impact was the disruption to the semiconductor supply chain, given Taiwan's key role in this industry. The newsletter also cast doubt on China's military readiness for such a campaign and noted recent diplomatic developments that had eased tensions. Additionally, the newsletter addressed the possibility of China reacting to Taiwan's post-election period with a range of actions, including military, economic, and cyber measures. Despite these tensions, the high projected cost of a conflict served as a strong deterrent, suggesting a significant incentive for all parties to avoid escalation. In conclusion, the tension between Taiwan and China, particularly with President Xi Jinping's assertion of reunification, poses significant geopolitical risks. Taiwan, facing potential Chinese aggression, is bolstering its defenses, including cybersecurity measures against daily threats, highlighting the seriousness of the situation. Taiwan's critical role in the global semiconductor industry further complicates the scenario, underlining the high stakes of any military conflict. The economic implications of such a conflict are staggering, with a potential cost of $10 trillion to the global economy. Despite the complexity of Taiwan's political landscape, where parties like the Kuomintang and the Democratic Progressive Party have differing stances towards China, the overarching aim is to maintain Taiwan's sovereignty. Taiwan's focus on asymmetric defense strategies, such as the porcupine strategy, is crucial in countering China's military might. Given the enormous human, economic, and political costs, it's clear that avoiding war and seeking peaceful resolutions is paramount for global stability. For more insightful content on global issues, consider liking and subscribing. Your support helps broaden the discussion on these critical topics. Thank you for your engagement.